Welcome, everyone. My name is Crystal Levine, and I am the South Carolina PTA Compliance and Success Chair. We have a special guest with us. We have Denise Corona from AIM Insurance with us. She's a client relations specialist, and she is going to be talking to us about 4 different types of insurance to help make sure everyone understands the differences, why they're important, and also, we'll be kind of explaining what we might need to do to take advantage of those insurance policies. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to her presentation and turn it over to Denise.
Hello, everyone. Crystal, thank you so much for that introduction. I'm so happy to be here with you all tonight from Texas. Hello from the South. I'm excited to be here again. We offer all the PTAs in South Carolina a really good chance at policies that cover your events, your volunteers, your attendees. Super important to keep yourself and the people that are helping you do what you do at your events. And that's what I'm here to discuss with you today. So as Crystal noted, I am with AIM. We're a company that's been around for about 30 years, and we insure PTAs, and that is what we do. So the first question, and really one of the most important, is why does your group need insurance? A lot of people aren't aware that as a PTA, you need to protect your assets. And that is the personal assets of your members. Sadly, at this point, anyone can sue for any reason. And we see that all the time with some of the claims that we receive. PTAs are not immune from liability. I'm a PTA mom in Texas, and, I never thought, I've been with AIM for almost 10 years now, and that was just not a thing that I thought would happen, PTA be sued, but it is something that happens all the time, sadly. Typical school insurance does not cover PTAs, and it is important for you to ask your school if you feel like you're covered under there, just to see exactly what it is that you're covered for. Most policies cover the named insured, and unless you are added onto that policy, there is no coverage for you as a group. And then insurance is important for groups like PTAs because it helps pay attorney fees to defend you should something happen. So what kind of insurance should you consider as a PTA? As Crystal pointed out, there are 4 pieces of insurance that's super important as a group for you all to consider. The main one, and a lot of the time we fundraise. I'm a PTA mom, so I say we a lot. We're here to save on kind of the expenses and fundraise as much as possible. Our event insurance is at the very base need for PTAs, and that event insurance helps protect your volunteers and attendees at your PTA sponsored events. And it comes with an extended medical payments policy, and then also has media liability available. And I'm going to discuss those a little bit more in depth here as we go further down the presentation. But next is the embezzlement insurance. That's a protect for your money. So your money from embezzlement, robbery, or theft, it helps you recover those lost funds, and that's super important. Directors and officers liability, exactly what it's called. It protects your directors and your officers. And then your property insurance, that may or may not be needed by your PTA, and it's something that you all can discuss and choose. So event insurance, what does event insurance protect your PTA from? The general liability actually protects you from lawsuits that come about due to bodily injury or property damage. So if you're hosting a PTA event and someone trips, falls, breaks their arm, or gets hurt in some way, the general liability, if there's a lawsuit, helps you protect you from those bodily injury and property damage claims. Property damage can be property of the location where you're hosting. So it can be on school property or off school property. There's a lawsuit due to that. The general liability helps protect you. Who needs protection under the general liability? The named insured, which is your PTA. And then PTA members, volunteers, and employees. Super important. This policy comes with $1 million worth of coverage. So when you purchase it, $1 million worth of coverage is included. Did you know that your school's insurance does not cover or protect your PTA? Like I said, 9 times out of 10, those policies do not extend to your group. If you all are a separate group, you have your own bylaws and your own bank accounts, insurance should be purchased individually. What our general liability policies could extend to are things like bounce houses. A lot of our PTAs are a little wary of those. Our policies actually are bounce bounce house friendly. So you can have those types of activities at your events. Babysitting, roller skating parties, graduation swim parties, dances after prom, fun runs, bazaars. We have raffles all the time, dinners, book fairs, food sales. Those are just some examples of events that may have some liability, may cause some liability to your PTA. So activities that are not covered, this is a question that we get sometimes. And so there are some hard exclusions on the policy, and it means that there is no coverage and you cannot purchase additional coverage. So automobiles, our policies are not commercial auto, so you couldn't purchase auto insurance for collision or accidents. That's not something we offer. Watercraft. This comes up for us a lot in California. They want to rent a boat, maybe take the students out on the bay, something like that. Unfortunately, watercraft is excluded. Workers' compensation is something we don't offer, but PTAs, generally speaking, do not have employees, and that's what it would extend to. Fireworks sales or use. I'm not sure about how South Carolina deals with that, but 4th of July in Texas, we have a lot of groups that actually do want to sell them to fundraise, and it's just something that is excluded from our policy. Mechanical rides, so things like choo-choo trains, the mechanical bulls, those kind of things, golf carts are excluded from our policy, so keep that in mind. Aircraft, so we wouldn't be able to cover air travel. We had a group wanted to do a helicopter ride as a raffle prize. Unfortunately, our policies do exclude that. And then organized sports, that's a good one to keep in mind, because as a PTA, sometimes you're asked to fundraise for the sports teams at schools, and that's totally okay. But this policy would not cover would be those teams' practices, tournaments, or games. So we wouldn't cover their events. But if your PTA is fundraising, doing a car wash, or having a food sale for the soccer team, that's okay. It's the actual sporting events that are the school's teams that are not covered under our policies. Extended medical payments endorsement. When you buy your general liability, when you purchase general liability coverage for your PTA, extended medical payments come with it. So $5,000 worth of this policy comes along with your general liability. And this is a good policy because it helps pay out out-of-pocket medical expenses. So if someone says, you know, I was hurt or my child was hurt at your PTA event, we don't want to sue. We just need this medical bill paid. This is the policy that helps pay that out. When you purchase general liability, $5,000 comes with it. What kind of protection does it provide? It gives you easy reimbursement for out-of-pocket injuries, out-of-pocket expenses, excuse me, due to injuries sustained at your PTA events. And then it covers your volunteers and attendees of those PTA events. Why is it important? Medical payments is important. That coverage specifically is important because it provides you an option to increase the limit, to have a higher or a larger medical expense should you need it. And it helps deter lawsuits. Like I said, a lot of parents don't want to sue your PTA. They just want help with a medical bill if there was an injury at your event. So this is the policy that helps that. Again, the general liability automatically includes a standard $5,000 medical payment per occurrence. So you have that available on your policy. And just to kind of give you an idea on this, this is not like car insurance. So if there is a claim, go ahead and call us immediately, submit that as soon as possible. That will not raise your rates. It will not get your insurance canceled, any of that. It is important to notify us as soon as something like that occurs at one of your events. The extended medical payments endorsements allows you to increase this limit if you have particularly high risk activities, such as bounce houses. So if you know your PTA is going to be fundraising a lot this year and you're going to have a lot of activities that are very physical, this may be part of the coverage that you want to increase. It's definitely valuable. So does my group need higher medical payments? Every PTA is different. How much protection you need really is based on the number and types of activities you're going to have. Again, when you purchase your policy, you get $5,000 right away, but you can increase that to $10,000, $25,000, and $50,000. Those are options, and you just contact us to do that if need be. Our media liability endorsement. This is the other piece of coverage that is available when you purchase general liability. I always say that general liability is like buying your burger, you can add a shake or fries. This is kind of what this is, just an endorsement in addition to that general liability. And it protects you from liability associated with your website or social media. Types of risks. So if you're posting photographs without getting a release, we actually had an issue like that where the PTA uploaded just what we call a photo dump. You just kind of upload everything into your Facebook page. they posted it, they kind of logged off, walked away for a long weekend, and there was a picture of a child in that bunch that shouldn't have been released or wasn't approved by the parents, and they actually had signed waivers against it. And so there was a lawsuit for that. It was an honest mistake, but that is something that would be covered under the media liability endorsement. Using trademarks or logos, a lot of us will go on Google. You know, we're having an event, we Google daisies because we're having a flower sale. That logo or that photograph was copywritten. It had, you know, you need to be licensed, you need to be paid for. There are companies now that actually have AI that finds their images online, and they may choose to sue. And so this is the type of endorsement that would help protect you from that. And the types of social media that includes under this coverage is things like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, your own PTA website, Twitter, all kinds of online social media websites for this coverage. Embezzlement insurance. How does embezzlement insurance protect your PTA? This is super important because your goal as a PTA is to help fundraise, and your money is super important, and this coverage is specific to that. So embezzlement insurance actually protects your cash or the money of your PTA against embezzlement, robbery, or theft. And a lot of people ask, okay, so who is covered under this policy? Our fidelity bond policy is actually a blanket policy. So it actually covers anyone who handles or has access to your group's money. So it doesn't have to be just the treasurer. If you have a volunteer, you give them the money bag to go deposit it in the bank and it's stolen, there would be coverage under this embezzlement insurance. So this is the fraud triangle. Especially when I started with AIM and just doing this specific type of insurance, I always wondered who would steal from a PTA, who would embezzle. And really there's just motivation, opportunity, and rationalization. Especially around holiday time, we see this. This is one of our highest claims coverage. You know, a lot of the time people have access to the PTA money, have access to the checking account, the credit card, debit card, any of that motivation. Unfortunately, right now, as I'm sure you all can feel, things are tough. And so sometimes you have the opportunity of saying, well, there's, you know, a couple hundred that I can borrow from the account. I'm going to put it right back. That generally doesn't happen because it is kind of a cycle of the need for those funds. And we see a lot of claims come in because of this opportunity, rationalization, and the motivation for fraud within the PTA. So how can your PTA protect itself from a loss? There are some requirements to this policy that's important to take note. And this is also something that your PTA should do to help protect itself from loss. Having your checking account require 2 signatures on each check. That is a way to help control who is sending out checks, who is issuing checks. Have someone who does not have check signing authority review the bank account statements monthly. We always say 2 people. A lot of the time it'll be the treasurer and a volunteer, or it can be 2 people, one with check signing authority is fine, but the other without, and they need to be reviewing those bank statements monthly. This is the way to catch money missing or some issue right away. And then conduct an annual audit of the books, either by a committee, just a couple of people that you all put together to review, or some PTAs hire a qualified accountant. So those 2 things are required. Having 2 people check your monthly bank statements, one without check signing authority, just checking to make sure there are no missing funds or issues, and then an annual audit. So these 2 things need to be followed in order for that policy to be enforced and help protect you if there's a loss. Always have 2 people count money, sign receipts, and then double verify email requests from other PTA members. Unfortunately, this last line here, double verify email requests for money from other PTA members, has been added onto our presentation because lately, literally in the last 6 months to a year, we have had so many claims for wire fraud, where the treasurer will get an email from the president, will say, hey, you know, we're buying these things. Hey, I need to send this payment. Please send me X amount of money to this account. Zealot, send it, you know, whatever method to send the money out. The person that receives their message thinks, yeah, that's our president. That's her email. That's her name. I'll send the money, and come to find out that was never, it was actually fraud. It was a scam. Someone stole the money, and after sending it, it's almost impossible to get that back, especially through a third party payment system. And so you always want to verify when you're being asked for money via email or Teams or Messenger, that you verify who is requesting that money and what it's for before sending. How much coverage do you need? So with embezzlement insurance, it's important that each PTA determine their own level of coverage. The best and safest practice is really just to match your gross annual budget revenues to your bond limits. So we have limits up to 250,000, and then our lowest limit is 10,000. So it really does help protect any PTA at any budget. Directors and officers liability. So why does your PTA need directors and officers liability insurance? Exactly as it's titled, directors and officers liability is there to protect against lawsuits resulting in wrongful acts or inappropriate actions. So what it's titled, it protects your directors and officers. A lot of people are aware that when you volunteer for a nonprofit like the PTA, unless there's coverage, your personal assets may be at risk if you are named in a lawsuit with the PTA. So this is a really important coverage to have. We offer the directors and officers liability for the following situations: inappropriate use of PTA funds, misleading statements, wrongful or negligent acts, discrimination, not following your PTA's bylaws, or misrepresentation. It does exclude things like dishonesty, criminal acts, or willful, reckless behavior, that kind of thing. But if you are sued for the top reasons, wrongful acts, discrimination, misrepresentation, some of those claims or lawsuits may not have merit, but if those are the reasons for it, your directors and officers are covered up to $1 million in coverage through this policy. Property insurance. So property insurance may not be needed by your PTA, but some PTAs do need it. It protects any of your personal property that's either owned by the PTA or in the care, custody, and control of your PTA. And so this is due to loss for damages for an accident. If it was stolen, it was, there's a flood and it was lost in the flood, that kind of thing. A lot of the time we'll have groups, PTAs will say, well, our stuff is in the school closet, and so the school covers it. But unfortunately, the school's insurance does not cover your PTA property. So if you do have property that you'd like to protect, this is an important coverage to use. Okay, types of property typically protected. It can be anything from fundraising merchandise, popcorn machines, auction items, barbecues, tables and chairs, microphones or electronics, even raffle items. Sometimes you've had PTAs that do, self-care kits or things that help those that are in need, like disaster relief materials. All that would be covered under the property policy. And that is our presentation. So this is our group of ragtag agents that help you. We do not have a phone tree. So when you call AIM, a live person answers. We are the company that you can call with any question. As a PTA, the things that you need to succeed are important, and a lot of those are really logistical questions. How do I do this? What will I need? So if you have questions about vendors, if you have questions about activities, if you have questions about how your insurance applies to a situation, it's important to give us a call because we are happy to help and answer anything that you need. As your PTA agents, we hear all kinds of questions. And so anything that you have, shoot our way. Never feel like it's a silly question. A lot of us are moms. Some of us are PTA moms. And so been there, done that, and we want to help you. So always feel free to reach out. And Crystal, if it's available, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, so we have two in the chat that I wanted to bring up. So the first one is, do we need any additional insurance or waivers to be able to use something like a Razor scooter or a bike as a giveaway when it was a prize given to us with a fundraiser?
Got it. Okay, so two things there with that question. Waivers are not a hard requirement of the policy. So what that means is you won't pull up our AIM policy that says you have to have a waiver for coverage to apply. But saying that, it's super important to use waivers. I use them with my PTA. We actually have samples on our website because in the insurance industry, even though they're not required, we show that it helps, lower, lessen the lawsuits that come when people sign waivers. It just makes them more aware. We all know we take our kid to the trampoline park. Any place you go nowadays, we have to sign a waiver. And so, it's super important because they're not required. The good thing is that you can actually use a waiver whichever way you want. So you can do a Google waiver. You can print them out on your letterhead. Like I said, we have samples. So it's good to kind of tweak them and use them. So you do not need waivers, but you should have waivers. As far as using a razor scooter or a bike, as long as those are not, I'm not sure about razor scooters. I don't know if they're mechanical or motorized. If there is a motor,
There's no motor in a razor
okay,
scooter.
so if there's no motor, then you're good because mechanical and motorized rides are excluded, and that would be in a gray area. But if it's just a scooter and a bike, you can have those. We actually have PTAs that do like bike-a-thons. They'll raffle off a bike, and then everybody kind of goes to the local park and they'll bike for 2 miles and they'll do a race time. So that's covered. If someone were to be riding the bike at your event and have an injury, your general liability will help protect you. Your medical expense payment will help pay out till $5,000 unless you've increased it. And so you have coverage for something like that. Yeah, with razors or bikes. And again, the waiver is super useful, but it is not required. So if you don't have a signature and somebody was injured, your coverage is still there. We will protect you as your insurance company.
Okay, the second question is, we will be organizing a walk to school day. We state that parents must stay with their children until they go into the school building. Do we need to add any language to event advertising that the PTA is not liable for accidents during that walk to school, or does this event open us up for more liability?
Okay, so there's a couple of different points to that question. A walk to school day sounds really awesome. I never had that idea, so I'm going to jot that down for my PTA. But so as far as your insurance and how that applies, your general liability insurance, that's your event insurance, protects your volunteers and attendees. But there are some rules to that. So it has to be approved, it has to be scheduled, it has to be planned, and the majority of the manpower needs to be coming from your volunteers or members. So if this walk to school event is a PTA sponsored event, you all approved it, you've scheduled it, you've planned it out, and your volunteers will be there. There is coverage under your general liability should someone be hurt. They're walking to school, they twist their ankle, the mom says, hey, I need to have an ER bill. Totally okay. Now, if you all as a PTA put the flyers together, you're posting on your Facebook about it, you're saying at the bottom, we're not liable, but you're not going to be there. There's not going to be any of your volunteers or members there. You put it together, but you kind of talk to the school about it, and you're really not handling the logistics of like, is the someone going to be there to watch? That kind of thing, then that's a gray area. And unfortunately, even if you write it down and say we're not liable, you are promoting it as a PTA event because you're putting it on your PTA documents, your website, your flyers, online, you're posting about it. So that may extend some liability to you. And so if it is a PTA sponsored event, and again, it's approved, scheduled, planned, and some of the manpower is coming from your volunteers and members, there's coverage if someone's injured or hurt. But you want to be very careful in that you're not putting something out or promoting something that your PTA will not be attending or you won't have volunteers there because you may be held liable. And when a claim adjuster receives that claim, that's the question, whose event was this? And so that's kind of where you start. So you want to be very clear in that if this is something that you are participating in, that you note approved, scheduled, planned, and the majority of the manpower comes from your groups. If that is the case, then it is a PTA event. And if there is some sort of issue where there's a bodily injury, you would probably have coverage under the general liability. And by I say probably, or maybe that's, again, every claim needs to be reviewed. But again, approved, scheduled, planned by, and the majority of manpower, if those are all yeses, then the claim would be covered under the GL.
And just to add a PTA lens to that, it's considered a best practice for those events to contact local law enforcement and ask for help at major intersections close to the school where you think a lot of students will be coming.
Yeah.
Just putting that out there. Okay.
Yeah, super important.
Okay, next question. What is the best, safest way to have parents send money to the school? Does it need to be in a sealed envelope with a lockbox specifically for the PTA the school's vault. Okay, this is probably more of a us question than a you question. If you have any insurance lens you want to add, I can address it later.
Yeah. So with that, we mentioned you have embezzlement insurance, but that's your PTA fund. So until they're in your vault, then our coverage wouldn't extend to a parent sending it and being lost. And exactly as Crystal said, that's probably more on your end as how that's to be managed.
Okay, we'll come back to that one. Okay, next question. If there is a joint venture by two PTAs and someone gets hurt or injured, which PTA provides the coverage?
Ooh, that's a great question. Because we do that sometimes here with my PTA where we'll partner because it's good to have that much manpower and kind of that many people attending. So that's super important. And really, again, my four crown points: approved, scheduled, planned by, and the majority of the manpower. So if you both are having an event and there's an issue, the claim may be submitted to both PTAs. It's really important as a PTA, if you're working with another PTA, to confirm with them, hey, do you all have insurance? And get a copy of that. And just have a yes on file. Because as your insurance agency, insurance agents, we're gonna protect you. Your carrier is gonna protect you. There's gonna be a response to a claim. We'll get an adjuster on there. But again, they're gonna say, okay, whose event was this? And they go back to when was it approved? Who scheduled it? Who was planning it? What volunteers were there? And that's really what answers that question. So anytime that you do work with another PTA, one, you have to secure your own insurance, make sure that you're well insured. Two, check that the other PTA is insured, that they at the very least have general liability insurance. And then three, where you're hosting. So maybe you're at their school, maybe you're at your school, maybe you're at the local park that's in between both your schools. So that location where you're going to host, you check with them. Hey, what are your insurance requirements? Sometimes they'll say, oh, we just need to make sure you have insurance. Nowadays, a lot of them say, well, we need to be listed on your insurance and it needs to say this wording. And so if all three of those things are planned and done on your end, then if there was to be some sort of claim when two of you had an event at the local park, then you're insured, the other PTA is insured, and the location where you're hosting was added to the insurance, or at least is notified of your insurance. So both companies will protect their own insureds, and then companies do what we insurance people call subrogate. So they go back and say, when we looked at the details, you were liable, and this is what we're going to work through. But that is done on our end, away from you, and you don't have to worry about it. So on the front end, just make sure that you're insured, the other PTA is insured, and the location where you're going to host is either aware of your insurance or you're aware of their insurance requirements. So that's the most important part.
Okay, last one, and then we will let you go. We appreciate your time. So it says, if we increase coverage this year to cover two major events, can we decrease next year if we don't foresee needing the additional coverage?
Yeah, and that's about the great thing about our insurance with AIM. We understand your needs change every year. And so if you increase it this year because you're going to be super busy and you know that next year it's not, you always have the option to make those changes. You can always add insurance. So you can always increase your limits. You can add a coverage. You cannot take it away. So now that you've added it and it's increased for this term, it'll stay that way. But at renewal, you can make changes for sure. And that'll help your budget.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Denise. I appreciate you.
Okay.
I appreciate your time and expertise.
Awesome. Well, the number and email are right there on that form. Crystal, you're welcome to give out all our information. Any questions that you all have at any time, just give us a call. We're always happy to help. You all have a good night.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.